Well, it's been a minute since we've sat down with anybody for getting to know your Indiana neighbor, but boy, we done it this month. We've got three coming up really quick, and all of them I'm so interested to talk to. But this man right here, Brian Canada, coming up from St. Augustine, Florida, by the way, in the middle of winter. So thanks for coming up, Brian.
You're welcome. My honor, my pleasure.
And of course, there's reasons why Brian's in town this week, and we'll talk about that. It surrounds, of course, the all-time scoring record that as we record this on Monday morning, Brian still holds. A record he's held for 51 years. But in the next 48 hours, we think that Brian will pass that torch to Peyton Bledsoe. At least we hope. And Brian, your thoughts on that 51 years?
I am ready to hand it to Peyton. He certainly has deserved it and earned it. He's worked hard for it. He's one of the most phenomenal shooters that I have seen, and I'm ready to give it to him. He can take it. Yeah, he's earned it.
He's earned it.
I'm not giving anything to it. He's earned it.
Yeah, and we'll get to all that, and we'll talk about that because it is a big deal. It is a big deal, particularly with little, I guess it would have been 10, 11-year-old kids like me who counted among the many Brian Canada as his boyhood hero. And the setting, by the way, where we are, it's not where Brian played his high school basketball, as you know. It was then the brand new gym.
That's correct.
That had to seem like a Taj Mahal.
It was.
Yeah, compared
Beautiful.
to what you played. Yeah. So that would have been built in the 68, 69 season?
Well, 69 was the first season for the new high school and the new gym. So 68, when I was an 8th grader, obviously we played here.
Yeah. And here is, of course, the old Lagodi High School gymnasium on JFK Avenue here. And even though you just played one grade here, right? You played 8th grade?
I played 8th grade here. I didn't play my 7th grade year because I had the Osgood Slaughter's knee disease and had to sit out a year.
You know, that's interesting. That's something that back then you would hear of. That wasn't all that uncommon, and it's probably common today. It's just a different name, but I never hear of it anymore.
Well, a lot of players play through that now, I think. But I was instructed to stay off basically not play baseball and basketball for that full year, and basically that's what I attempted to do for the most part.
That had to kill you.
It was tough. I tell you, I stay on the couch a lot during the summer months, during baseball, and I tried to stay off my legs a lot. And the day that Dad took me back to Odin to the doctor for additional x-rays to see how we had progressed for improvement, and the day I was told, you're good to go, I can remember just going out of the house and running like 3 miles all over Crane Village. So it was a great moment.
Yeah. Well, I had a similar experience, Brian. I had rheumatic fever. Actually had it a couple of times. And old Doc Letts said, nope, can't run, can't play basketball. And obviously, that killed me. I would still play basketball, and I bet you did too, maybe in the driveway a little bit, right?
Well, initially when we first came to Lagodi, as a 7th grader, getting off the bus from Crane and being dropped off for the first time, there were a few times I attempted to play basketball right outside here in the parking lot. And I clearly, specifically remember and recall one time doing that before the bell rang for school to start. Coach Nante, Tim Nante, he saw me out there with the rest of the boys. And, he told me, take a break. Don't be doing this. And I listened to him. So I think from then on, I pretty much tried to follow the doctor's rule and Coach Nante's rule at that time is stay off your legs.
Yeah. So the school at that time was right next to us, right?
That's correct.
Where the city building is.
Right.
And were there not some classes behind the gym?
The building here on the west, I think it is, that was used also. So junior high and high school commingled. I think the building here to the south, is that south?
It is south. Directly south.
Was primarily junior high. And then we also went to classes on the other side of the building here with the high school kids.
Okay. But this gym, as I said, you didn't play a lot here, but it had to have been the years where you dreamed of being a Lagodi Lion, and you saw those Lagodi Lions that became your heroes. Tell me a little bit, do you remember the very first game that you came to see a Lagodi Lion game?
I can't honestly remember the very first game that I came, but I was in here a lot. I'm going to say 60, 61, 62, definitely 63, and on up. My dad would bring me Kathy, my sister, my oldest sister. I was a cheerleader. And of course, remember, obviously, Junior G became my idol. Lagodi had phenomenal teams with Bill Niggs and Bill Drake and Mike Bollinger and Daryl Smith. And I mean, at the sake of not mentioning them all, but they a lot of good players. They had a great team and loved just coming here. And that's actually the first time I saw my future wife, Diana.
Yeah.
We were at a game sitting on the south side, and there were a bunch of junior high girls, or elementary girls, excuse me, on the north side of the gym here. And at halftime, they were walking across the court. And I saw Diana for the first time. She didn't see me, but I met her, and I picked her, you know.
Now, what grade are we talking?
I'm going to say I was probably in the 5th grade then.
5th grade.
5th grade.
Yeah.
A little aggressive, I know. But...
No, you know, that's about the time. That's about the time. By the way, I've got a bullet point that's dedicated strictly to Diana. So we'll get to her.
Okay.
Much more later on. Diana Cox, Canada, of course, your wife of how many years?
48, 48 this March, yeah. Next month.
Do you remember where you sat here watching the games? Was it any specific?
Well, primarily I remember sitting here on the south side on the wooden.
Okay.
On the wooden bench.
Not up in the balcony?
I don't recall that, no.
Yeah.
No.
Were you able to sit with your friends, or did your dad have you sit with?
I recall just primarily Dad and I would come to the game.
Was he a big Lagodi fan?
Well, he was. He was a sports fan.
Yeah.
Like I said, my sister Kathy, the cheerleader.
Yeah.
And he was a very big sports fan because we lived in Crane forever.
Yeah.
And when I was in the 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, he would oftentimes get the key to the Crane gym, and we would take all the Nantes, the Trouts, Andersons, Lamars.
Yeah.
That's
quite a group.
Wow. I'm trying to remember. We would play a lot of basketball.
Yeah.
And of course, I was much younger than the rest of them, or most of them.
Yeah.
Not necessarily Jim Trout or Jack Trout, but they would be playing. He would take us over there all the time and have some great games.
Yeah.
Or at least they would, but I would find myself in the mix of it.
Yeah.
Oftentimes.
Let's talk about your dad a little bit. His given name was what?
Harold.
Harold?
And they
Canada.
Called him Lum.
Called him Lum.
Any idea?
Don't know why?
Don't necessarily know.
Okay.
Except for the stories of him being as a hoodlum. Now, but Lum was his nickname.
I don't know what Lum means.
Well,
we can look it up.
I know there was a story that he went to high school in Olytic.
Did he? Okay.
And he was completing basketball practice one day, and he was with another brother of his, and as they were leaving, there were 3 Marines walking down the street.
Okay.
And Dad grew up with 5 other brothers.
Yeah.
And these 3 Marines were giving them a very, very hard time. And Dad told, I'll just say it was Wayne or Howard or Ralph, I'm not sure which one it was, go get the other brothers, we may need help. And by the time they got back, his brothers, Dad was standing, and the 3 Marines were on the pavement.
Wow.
I mean, he was a tough, kind, gentle, but when pushed to the corner, he could truly take care of it. He was in high school.
Yeah, I saw a Facebook picture of your dad on your page, I guess, and that's kind of how you described it, only a little bit less succinct, but it was something like Dad may have been known as a tough guy or something, but he was a very gentle, kind guy.
Very big-hearted guy, loving guy.
He was a Bearcat, right? Is that Olympic? Olytic Bearcat.
Okay, that's what it was, yeah.
Maybe it wasn't back then.
Sounds right.
Yeah. Is that where he went to high school?
Olytic, yes.
Okay.
And then his brothers, some of the younger brothers that played, actually went to Bedford. But,
what did he do for a living?
He went to the Navy, and then he was a boiler operator inspector at Crane Naval Ammunition Depot.
So, but he worked. Okay, all right. So he lived, but he wanted to move closer, I guess, to his work. So that's why he moved to.
They moved to Crane. That was when the Crane Village and the apartments, the flat houses, and Crane at one time for many, many years was a very vibrant, active community. And so he lived in Crane shortly after he got out of the military and started at Crane Naval Ammunition Depot to work.
Was he a pretty good athlete?
He did well. Yeah, he was 6'1". He played center for Olynyk, and I was told he was did very well playing basketball.
And what about your mother? Tell me a little bit about her.
She's from Mitchell. Her maiden name Stroud. And her dad was a banker in Mitchell, like president of the bank. And they must have met at a ball game, Mitchell versus Olynyk, and got married right after he got out of the Navy. And Mom left Mitchell for a period of time, went to Indianapolis and worked as a bookkeeper in a bank. And when they came back to Crane, then for a number of years, she worked at RCA in Bloomington for a period of years. Then for a number of years later, when probably in my early college years, she was also the city clerk, office manager for the town of Crane, and also worked for Levon Hassler, Terry's father, at the Crane School as a secretary.
Terry Hassler, his brother-in-law.
My brother-in-law. Yeah. Good man.
Yeah. You'd mentioned sitting over here with your dad at the ball games. Did your mom attend the games?
So on occasion. On occasion. She would come. Maybe not on every game, because she had to get up early to go to RCA Bloomington too. Sometimes. So.
How would you describe her in regards to a personality?
Very calm, very polite, very giving, and very loving.
Yeah. So your father, you said, passed away at an early age of 60.
He was 60 years old.
What about your mother?
I think Mom was 83 or 84. Dad passed in 86, and then Mom passed in 2009.
Okay.
2009.
All right. And siblings? You've got a decent-sized family, right?
A big family.
Yeah.
Big family. Kathy, our oldest sister, as I mentioned earlier, she was a cheerleader here, and she passed in 1965. And then Karen, she also was a cheerleader, and obviously still lives here in Lagodi. And Cindy works at the bank here, as you well know.
The credit union.
And my sister Beth also lives here in Lagodi.
Yeah. And I'm sure you don't get here often enough in regards to yourself or them. How often do you get back to Lagodi?
On the average, maybe once a year or once every 18 months.
Sure.
But I know my siblings, they just have a wonderful family.
Yeah.
The grandkids, the kids, the love that they have. They're all involved in sports, so they're just running in all kinds of directions. And there's going to be some pretty good athletes coming up through not only the Bar Eve system, if time allows that, as well as the Lagodi system with a couple of the boys and girls.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yes.
That's exactly right. Of course, Leighton right now, a key part of the Lagodi varsity team, but he's got a brother that's coming up that's really good. I'm not going to speak too much because I'll get a big-sized head here, but
that's a good point.
Yeah, and his sister will contribute to the varsity in a large way here very soon. 8th grade, I think, right?
She is, right.
In regards to high school, gosh, I mean, there's got to be so many memories of high school, but when you hear the word Lagodi High School and when you were there, what pops into your mind? What are the 1, 2, 3 things that pops into your mind immediately?
Well, of course, everyone speaks about the 1970s group and going to the state tournament and the success that we had that year. With that was the consolidation of St. John's Lagodi.
A lot going on.
Which obviously helped with bringing Jim Trout and some others to the team. So obviously 1970 was a fun great, very successful year. Um, Playing varsity my freshman year with, Cecil Truelove, Rex Sager, Joe Lekumsky, Tony Smith,
Yeah.
Paul Bruner, Tony Walton, and myself primarily were the 7 or 8 players that played. We had a good team, I think, and we had a 16-5 record, I think, and that's what it was my freshman year. And St. John's, we drew them first game of the sectional. They were undefeated, and they beat us by 8 points. And everyone knew or thought St. John's would take that sectional that year. They get beat by North Davis, which had a very good team. Then they turn around and get beat by Otwell, who had a very good team. So it was a pretty challenging sectional even that year.
Yeah. Well, it was always, you talked about those teams that played here in the early, mid-'60s. They were good, but it was just tough getting out of that sectional.
Getting out of the Washington. Right. Well, it was so enjoyable to watch Junior and Bill Drake and those teams play. Mike Bollinger. They were always talented, tough, lose maybe 2 or 3 games, maybe 1 game one season. I forget their specific record, but getting out of that sectional has always been a challenge, or it was. Now, over the years, Lagodi had more success with that.
So 1969, 1970, you're a sophomore. The expectations, I mean, were there expectations, obviously not to go to the state, but goals of winning the sectional, or was Coach Butcher one to set goals?
I don't recall us reflecting on how far we might have an opportunity to advance. I mean, clearly with the team that we had just in '69, and then adding Jim Trout and Bernie Nante and some of the other, role players and what we had coming back. I don't remember us really speaking about it as a group. It was more focused on a day-to-day basis of getting better and coming together as a group. But we had to be expected to win the sectional, no doubt. Now, we had some tough competition even in the regional. I know Bloomfield was in there. They had a good team that year. In the regular season, we were beat by Mitchell in our holiday tournament. I believe we met Mitchell again in the regional and beat them. And then Paul Bruner had a phenomenal game. The afternoon, I believe it was, and that night in the regional, and we beat Bloomfield.
Right.
But I don't recall reflecting or a lot of talk about guys. This team should be able to reach the semi-state.
Yeah.
Maybe Coach Butcher and Coach Nante, maybe they probably had those types of discussions, but I think we were more driven to be focused on, getting better in practice, working together as a team, and we control what we can control.
And it doesn't sound right to say this because Jim Trout obviously is a legend, helped put Lagodi basketball on the map. But I've always felt like he was a little bit underappreciated. We know him as the Trester Award winner, but that senior year that he had at Lagodi was among the best that any senior's ever had.
Phenomenal. He was a great shooter himself. I think he averaged 22 a game. He needed a bucket. He generally could put it in. He was good at free throw shooting. He and Rex pulling down the rebounds. And,
you were too. You had a few.
Well,
but you let them have.
Jim and I. He brought Jack Trout up for the game the other night, and we had a lot of time to spend together. And Jim and I were talking, and I think statistically it shows where Jim had like 300 rebounds and Rex had 300 rebounds in that same year. And I said, how could that be possible? Were you guys collecting all my misses, which I know were plentiful? And Jim said, I think we were, Brian.
Somebody was.
So somebody was. And maybe it was on the defensive end when they were grabbing those. But Jim was a good ball player, very good ball player. He went to Indiana State on scholarship. So he, I don't know about being underappreciated, but he
I hesitate
was a leader
when I say that. But when I think of it, I think we think of him as the Trester Award winner, which he was. And at that time, I remember watching that kid from Lagodi, Indiana, winning that award.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
that was amazing. That just capped off what an unbelievable
Right.
weekend that we had. But, you know, on the water tower, it said Jim Trout Trester Award winner.
Right.
Didn't say great basketball player, but we all knew. That
Right. Right. Yeah, I'm very surprised he didn't make the Indiana
Yeah.
All-Stars that year.
Yeah.
You know, averaging 22, leading
Yeah.
our team that
Right.
year to the state.
Yeah.
He didn't, but
Small town bias, maybe.
we move on, right?
Right. Super sophomore. That's the first time I'd ever heard that name was Brian Canada. And we still bring it up occasionally when somebody says something about Brian Canada, super soft, right? I don't know. It seemed like maybe we saw that in the Washington paper. It might have been Ron Critchlow. I can't recall. Those days, you know, we scoured those newspapers for every statistic we could get and every article. But did you blend in well with the seniors? And if you want to, go back to your freshman year, you know, with some of those seniors. But was it difficult blending in with those players? And here you are coming up as a freshman and now getting a lot of attention as a sophomore?
I don't. I'm going to answer it just quickly. Yes, I think I blended in. I don't know how they took it, but there didn't seem to be any animosities or jealousies. You know, in playing as a freshman and then as a sophomore. Of course, Rex, my freshman year, Rex started. He was a junior, Rex Sager. And, well, Tony played a lot as a sophomore, and Paul Bruner started, I believe.
Yeah.
So, Cecil Truelove, when I was a freshman, he was on the team, Joe Lekumsky. So I think the chemistry, I think it worked well. We may have to call in Coach Butcher to find that answer out.
Well, if you didn't feel it, you know, that's kind of what I was getting at. Did you feel any animosity? Sounds like never did.
Did not. Yeah.
I think that says a lot for the chemistry of the team.
Right.
I'm sure. Yeah. So 70 was the year, but you had 2 more years to go. 71, 72. You know, I remember in 71, we got back to the semi-state, lost to Floyd Central.
Floyd Central.
And I cried because I thought we were going to go to the state every year. Remember, I was only 10 years old or whatever, and I thought it was something that this was a regular occurrence, and it was a lot of fun. And here we get beat by what now we understand is a big school.
Correct.
But at the time, that didn't matter.
Right.
To Lagodi, right? We expected to win that game.
Yeah, we beat Tell City in the afternoon by 1 point, or a very close ball game. And
I think,
Floyd Central, they had a great team.
They did.
Matter of fact, the year before, and I saw an article just the other day that someone else had posted, where it was talking about us being in the semi-state in 70, with Seymour in the semi-state in 70, and the sports writer said these two teams could meet again next year. Well, we returned, and I guess that Floyd Central must have beat Seymour. Seymour wasn't there, Floyd Central, and they had a good team. We did too. I think we were 24-4 or something like that. Tony Smith, Paul Bruner, Steve Beasley, Dave Hawkins, and myself, and Denny Bauer, and Ed Snare was on the team. And I apologize, guys, for not mentioning everybody. Bill Harbison. We ran out of gas, I guess. I think we got beat by 9. They had Jerry Hale. I believe he went to University of Kentucky. I believe he Indiana All-Star. And they had the Schellenberger brothers, or at least one of them. They were good.
And I think one went to Louisville, if I remember right.
They were good.
Or maybe Hale did. But anyway, they had 2 Division I players.
I think Jerry Hale went to Kentucky,
Did he go to Kentucky?
I believe. Could be wrong, but...
So 71, a terrific year. So now your senior year, 72. Take me through that year a little bit.
Disappointing. Very disappointing. I feel like I let our team down in a lot of ways. Myself and several of the other players were on a suspension.
Is that to start the season?
To start the season. Rightfully so.
Sure.
We got out of the gate slow when we came back. We had a rough season, a rough record. I think we ended the year, well, I know, we were 13-7. Very disappointing. We were up and down, up and down. Mitchell beat us at home. I think Mitchell at the time was 0-12, and they beat us by 1. We go to Bedford. Bedford had a good team. They beat us by 1. On a weekend where there was a double hitter, we get beat by North Knox. They were average, and then we get beat by Washington the next night. Bar Eve beat us twice. One of the games, myself, Steve Beasley, Dave Hawkins didn't get a play. We were on the suspension. Wayne and the sophomore group, Alan Crane, Bill Butcher, they filled in, and they played a lot, but they filled in that particular game very admirably. Bar Eve beat us by 12 or 13 points. We later in the season go to Bar Eve. I forget how we played, but we got beat by 1 point. Our last game of the season, when I broke Junior's record, we played Winslow. I break the record, but Winslow beats us by 5. We end the season 13-7. Just up and down, very disappointing. If my memory serves me correctly, before our season started, at that time, Coach Butcher brought us in the locker room, his office, and told us that he expected, or he thought that this could be one of the best teams that we could have, or that he has coached. I'm not sure. It didn't happen that way by no means. And so all in all, it was very disappointing. We went to Jasper during the regular season, and we beat them by a point on their court. So now we enter the sectional. We draw Otwell. We beat them very handedly, 100-50, I believe it was.
I remember the scoreboard, sure.
If you get the order of things, I think our next game, I think we had to play 3 games to win it. I should have looked all this up, but I think it was 3 games. So we beat Otwell on a Tuesday. Then that Friday night, I want to say it was Washington. But we come back, and after Washington beat us in the regular season, we beat Washington by 7 or 8 points. And then we face Bar Eve. They're undefeated. And I think we end up beating them by 20 or 22 points. So things seem to be getting, we're winning and playing better, more as a unit and as a team. Go to the regional. We meet Bedford in the afternoon. They had beat us in the regular season, and we beat them by 5, 6, 7, 8 points. That night we faced Jasper again in the regional down in Washington, and unfortunately they beat us by a point.
Well, there had to have been nothing like playing at the Hatchet House, though.
It was fun, crowded, packed, a lot of excitement.
Yeah, and games that were nail-biters. A lot of the games were nail-biters. So take me back to that night. I know the date because I was reminded recently, but February 15th, 1972, which coincidentally will be one day after, potentially, your record is broken, 51 years, almost to the day. But, so you broke Junior G's record. Junior was your childhood hero.
He was.
Right?
Yes, he was.
And so that would have been 9 years later. What was did they stop the game? Tell me what you remember about what, you lost the game. So you were probably behind at that time, so it wasn't probably the most joyous occasion.
That's correct.
Tell me what happened once that record was broken.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many points I needed that game. I know someone else posted the article to remind us of the, yes, Canada got the record, but they lost the game.
No, they reminded you that you got the record. You took it that you lost the game.
Well, we did, 60-55. So I'm not sure whether it was the second quarter, third quarter. But yes, they did stop the game. And I recall Coach Butcher presenting me with the ball. And I believe Coach G, Junior G, he was coaching North Davis that year. And I presume he had a ball game that night. But Coach Butcher we stopped the game, presented the ball, and we got, then we got went on with the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't remember a lot of hoopla about that. Obviously, I was honored.
Right.
In achieving that record, surpassing Junior. But that was kind of how the process went.
So you get a scholarship to Indiana State.
Correct.
Did you have other offers to consider?
Some smaller schools that had looked at me. I had a trip planned. Coach Butcher arranged it to fly down to Memphis State on a private plane, and I think the weather kind of subdued that.
Okay.
Evansville had offered me a scholarship, but I wanted to stay close to home. Sure. Tennessee, University of Tennessee had contacted University of Georgia, but a true offer early on came from Indiana State.
Was that Gordon Stauffer?
Gordon Stauffer was the head coach then.
So, didn't really pan out for you in basketball. You had some injuries.
No, it didn't. When I left to go to Indiana State, in my mind and my goal was to play basketball, but was to get a degree, to make sure I did get a degree. So I made the varsity team my freshman year. I played in 9 of the first 12 games, and it must have been that 12th game against Santa Clara, California at Indiana State. I hurt my knee, my right knee. Had surgery several months later. So then my sophomore season, I redshirted and rehabilitating my knee. Came back for most of my junior year, still rehabbing and building my knee back up. So shortly after that, I'll jump ahead until 1975, about 3 years later, I finally married Diana. We were expecting our first daughter, Brianna. And I felt like I really lost my mojo, my drive. I was still going to school. Diana was going to school, getting ready to have a baby. Things were not just happening great with my knee. So I went in and quit, basically. And I was able, fortunately, to retain my scholarship for another year so I could graduate and then move on with real life.
Okay. All right. So as I said, I've got a single topic bullet point here, Diana, right? I know you were high school sweethearts. Obviously, you went to Indiana State. She graduated from Indiana State as well.
She did.
In 75 as well?
We actually graduated in 76.
76.
Right.
Okay. When you think back to high school sweethearts, and here you are, what do we say, 47, almost
48 in March, 48 years, yes.
At the risk of embarrassing her, tell me
me?
a little bit, or you, as much or as little as you want, tell me about Diana Cox Canada.
Well, she was a junior high cheerleader. As I mentioned earlier, I saw her, I met her, she didn't meet me when I was in the 5th grade when I saw her walking across the floor.
So many times at the gym is where that connection's made. It doesn't matter.
No, it's right over here.
That's amazing. We should have done the interview
sitting
from
right over here.
We should have done the interview from right there.
She was a very active, spirited, sweet.
Yeah.
You imagine that? Sweet lady, a girl.
Yeah.
But her dad was a barber.
You didn't say it, but I did. That's too. Yeah, absolutely.
Her dad was the barber. Bob Cox.
Yeah.
Everyone knew Bob.
Sure did.
She had a wonderful mother, Mary Cox.
Yeah.
She passed away a few days before our senior high school graduation. Mary is a wonderful woman. She taught Dinah and I how to drive a 57 Chevy stick shift. But Dinah and I, we'd go to the Ritz Theater in 7th and 8th grade a lot. Somehow I'd get down here. Terry was dating my sister.
That's right. You had to come from Crane.
Right. Well, Terry would come to Crane and get Karen a lot of times, and then somehow I would tag a ride to him. Of course, some of the older guys might come down this way. But somehow I found my way to Lagodi frequently. We would go to the movie theaters.
What movie stands out that you and Diana went to?
Maybe Gone with the Wind.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That was a long one.
That was a long one. But hey, if you're on a date, it's might
Other than that, I'm not sure about any of the other ones.
Gone with the Wind. Yeah.
But, yeah, and, in high school, we were both able, she was a varsity cheerleader freshman year, and I played varsity, so we were blessed and fortunate to work together at the junior senior prom as servers, and so we were able to do that. As I mentioned, her mom taught us how to drive, or taught me anyway. Diana's still working on that.
Speaking of the prom, let me interrupt for a second.
Okay.
You were king of the prom your senior year, weren't you?
I was, yes, the king. With the queen was Lori Devine.
Lori Devine.
Right.
Okay.
Good lady. Haven't seen her in ages.
Yeah. And Diana, in her family, you mentioned Bob and Mary. They were very close to our family. My mother, in particular, very close with Mary, particularly.
That's right.
Toward the last years, and they were neighbors. And
well, your grandmother,
yes,
babysitted Mary, not babysitted, but took care of Mary during her
she did.
time of illness.
I just remember feeling, it's just so bad for Diana and Darla at such an early age. Not that, they were at an early age, but she was so young.
Well, Bob was 42 when Mary passed. Darla was a freshman in high school, and Diana was a senior and graduating. We went to graduation. Mary was in the funeral home for viewing. Very sad, very devastating time. And Diana and I have talked over the years that probably she should have stayed here in Lagodi for at least 6 more months to help with the transition with Darla and Bob, and then maybe come to Indiana State, maybe second semester. But it was a very, very tragic time, as I'm sure people could have gone through themselves and can imagine how difficult that was.
So you did you say it was your senior year that you ended up getting married in college, or right after?
No, we actually got married in '75, so we still had about another 18 months. So we lived in Mary's student housing, and I worked at RCA Columbia Records. Oh yeah. In the injection molding department for a while.
Didn't know Chuck Miles, did you? Doesn't sound familiar?
Doesn't. Okay. No.
Yeah.
So I worked and took 19 hours of college credits and had my best GPA, like a 3.25. So, like I said, one of the main goal was to get the degree.
Yeah. So you get the degree. You have a child, right?
Brianna Lynn.
Yeah, Brianna Lynn. And you get your degree. Where do you go from there?
Well,
so we're trying to catch up now in the last half century, folks. We'll try to do it fairly quick, but
Johnny Jackson.
I know Johnny Jackson.
Unfortunately, Johnny's not with us now, but became acquainted with Johnny because he was a big Lagodi basketball fan.
Great guy.
And as I was graduating at the time, I got a degree in safety management.
Okay.
And somehow but we had to do an internship, a 6-month on-the-job training. Some were paid, some were not. So initially I was struggling to find one, but I initially found one at Holman Airfield in aviation safety. Of course, you would think aviation safety would be up in the tower where you're learning how to land and control and look at air traffic control and all the schematics of incoming and outgoing flights. Well, mine consisted of landing planes with the flashlights, and throwing luggage in the cargo hold.
Multitasking.
But the point of bringing that up, I did have the honor of loading and boarding Lisa Maria, Elvis Presley's plane when I was doing that. So we did that, saw Elvis. He had had a concert in Bloomington.
Oh, my.
And fortunately, maybe a week, 2 weeks after that, Johnny Jackson said, I think I can get you an internship in Mount Vernon with the General Electric plastics facility, down by Evansville.
Right.
And fortunately, the HR manager there, and I still remember his name, Clyde Hobbs, apparently on the way to work, he was speeding, and Johnny stopped him, introduced himself, and probably dressed his speeding, but said, hey, by the way, I've got a young man that's looking for an internship in safety, and 2 weeks later, I was working at Mount Vernon GE. Thank you, Johnny.
All because Clyde was speeding.
Well, that's how the story was told to
Yeah.
me, and I'll just continue to pass it on.
Did Diana work during those times, or did she stay home to?
Diana got a degree in elementary education.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. See, we learned something. I didn't know
And we had Brianna. Brianna was with us in Mount Vernon, Indiana, of course. And then in '78, Diana was teaching for a while, and then she became pregnant with our twin boys, Bryce Eric and Brandon Scott. Unfortunately, Bryce passed away 2.5 months after he was born, with stillborn crib death.
Don't know that I knew that.
Excuse me, crib death.
Right.
So Diana did teach for a number of years, and then we stayed in Mount Vernon, Indiana for 8 years, and some of the GE folks went to Augusta, Georgia with a GD Searle Pharmaceutical, and they were building the NutraSweet plant, the artificial sweetener. Right. So in '84, that's a lot of years still to catch up in it, but in '84 we moved to Augusta, Georgia.
Yeah.
And I worked there for 10 years.
That wasn't a difficult decision, was it?
Well, it was.
Yeah.
My mom and dad were still here.
Okay.
My siblings were still here.
Sure. Okay.
For 30 years, we knew Indiana, and we loved and still love Indiana. And so, yes, it was a difficult decision. Even when I was down there after working 9 months or so, I kind of began to see, is there any way I can come back? And as time progressed, we realized, we met some friends. We went to the Masters tournament. The weather was beautiful.
You were hooked. Yeah.
The big lake that they have at Strom Thurmond Lake. We stayed for 10 years.
10 years. And did Diana work there?
She did. She had a really good job at Fort Gordon. It's an Army military base, and she did a lot of different types of training with the military and even in the civilian work, and did training in continuous improvement. So yeah, she worked probably 6 or 7 years there.
And you were working with GE?
Well, I was with GE here in Mount Vernon, but when I left, I went with what was GD Searle, the NutraSweet company.
Okay.
Then after Augusta, I did go back to GE in Ottawa, Illinois.
Oh, that's right. I remember that.
In Ottawa, Illinois, and that's where our son Brandon, he graduated from Ottawa, Illinois. But which was a good move because I was able to rebridge my time with GE. Therefore, today I get a GE pension. So we were in Ottawa, Illinois for right at 4 years with GE, and then had an opportunity for a promotion in Louisville, Kentucky at GE Appliance Park. And about that time, our daughter was graduating from Illinois State in teaching. She moved to Chicago for a short time. Brandon came when he got done with school. I'll get to that in a second if I may.
Sure.
But, he came and lived with us in Louisville. But the time that I was in Louisville before he moved down to us, or with us, he started out at Illinois State for a semester. Then he transferred to Waubonsee Junior College, and he did play some baseball. Then he went to Northern Illinois for a semester, finished there, and then he came to live with us. And he got 2 more years later, he got his degree at University of Louisville. So,
Okay.
And he's a Georgia Bulldogs fan.
Well,
so,
I
so
know.
am I.
Yeah, so are you. Yeah, you've had some good years on the football front anyway,
Oh,
down there for
they've got
sure.
a good team. Sorry about that
No,
rambling.
that's I didn't realize. I remember Ottawa, Illinois, because we would drive up to my uncle's house in Bloomington, Minnesota, and I remember going by. Is there a bridge there or something? But anyway, it says Ottawa, Illinois, and somebody pointed out that Brian Canada lives there or lived there, and I did not know that.
So that was in 95 to 99.
Okay.
Is that time frame?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So did you move from Louisville back to Georgia?
Let's see. No, from Louisville was General Electric Appliance
Right.
Park, and after 10 years, they started making some significant changes, and there's like 4,000 employees. I got laid off at GE Appliance Park with 24 years with GE now. So for about a year, we did some traveling, went to some weddings. I was searching for a job.
Sure.
But then we moved to Monroe, Louisiana.
That's right.
And I went with Graphic Packaging International.
Okay.
And worked for them for 10 years.
Yeah.
Right at 5 years in Monroe, Louisiana, and 5.5 years at their corporate office outside of Atlanta.
Okay. I'm trying to get you to retirement, Brian.
I retired 4 years ago. Thank you.
from
well, I retired at 65. Yeah, I was still at Graphic Packaging at corporate.
So you're in Louisiana. So now you're in St. Augustine, Florida.
For 4 years we've been there, yes.
4 years. And I'd imagine, I can only imagine because we're in the middle of winter here, but it's beautiful, but that you love it down there.
We do. Our grandkids, we have 4 grandkids. Our son's down there with his wife. We've met some great people right in our subdivision.
So your grandchildren are down there?
Our grandchildren are down there. They live in Nocatee. It's Ponte Vedra.
Yeah.
It's where there's 3 miles from where that other golf tournament's located.
Yeah.
But we have a granddaughter, Allie. She's 11, does a lot of swimming. She's in competition cheer now. Reagan's in everything she can get into. She's 8, soon to be 9. She does football, soccer, and she actually wants to play tackle football with the boys, but I don't think Dad's going to let her do that. Our grandson has played some basketball. He's 7. Plays a lot of baseball. He did some swimming for a while, so he may try to focus on baseball primarily.
Goodness, you stay busy then, don't you?
Well, we do. Particularly when they have sporting events, we try to make those.
Yeah.
And then our granddaughter, Lorraine, just turned 3 in September. So the one that stays busy is our son.
Yeah.
With his work and then running them to all their various practices and events.
Wow. Well, that's fantastic that you're able to spend that time with them. And nothing like grandchildren. Nothing like
It's a blessing.
It's a blessing for sure. Well, you're up here now. By the way, I'm sure you host a lot more people in St. Augustine maybe than what you did in Monroe, Louisiana, right?
Absolutely.
Family is
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, Monroe, Louisiana has a lot of things to offer, but St. Augustine, Florida, with the food, the ocean, we are enjoying St. Augustine, Florida.
How much have you followed Lagodi Lion basketball? I'm sure it's been on and off, but how much have you followed Lagodi basketball over the years?
Most recently, quite a bit.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times when Lagodi's playing, I'll listen to you and Mike on the radio, and occasionally when someone's YouTubing them.
Yeah, get to watch
so it's really fun to watch and then listen to you guys. Probably not so much when I was in my 30s or 40s, various places that I've been. Lost the name of the players and only got what was going on through contact and family back home.
Yeah.
Of course, technology has improved such that you can stay more in tune in it. But of course, when we were in Monroe, Louisiana, Matthias was playing.
And state champion.
That's right, 2012.
Right.
And was always tuned in to the radio on that. And then
I had a nephew on that team as well.
That's correct.
That was
right.
a very, very special year for both of us.
Great year.
Yeah.
But of course, I watched Josh Jeffers play. We were, Josh was 2000, or I forget when Josh actually graduated, but 2002 or so, in that time frame. So when we were in Louisville for 10 years, from 99 to about 2009, 2010, we'd come up and I'd go to the games occasionally. But here in the last 4 years, with the radio and YouTube, I've been able to catch a lot more.
Okay, good. Well, as we mentioned, Brian has a nephew, great nephew, Leighton Jeffers.
Leighton.
Right, on the ball club. He's a junior. And so what I do, I kind of invade Facebook pages, okay? And I saw a letter on there that Leighton wrote when he was, I don't know, 4th grade maybe, something like this. And it said he loves playing basketball, loves hanging out with his friends, and he's very proud of his uncle Brian Canada, who has scored like 1,000 points in his career. And the writing was on. Well, we'll show a picture of it. I don't
know if I've ever seen it.
Yeah, so you'll see it. But I just thought that was so cute because now here you are watching him play varsity basketball. You got a chance the other night. You'll get a couple of other chances. But you don't realize, there's no way that you can realize, being that person and being away for all those years, the Brian Canada name and what it still means to Lagodi. It's just difficult, I'm sure, for you to understand that. But it has, particularly for us people, of course, who were able to witness Brian playing basketball and baseball. I mean, a heck of a baseball player as well. So it's so special personally for me to have you back, to be able 51 years later to present and pass the torch to Peyton Bloodsaw, which, by the way, as we speak, hasn't happened yet. But maybe by the time you watch this, it has, because Tuesday night is a good opportunity. But when you do come back to Lagodi, I'm sure it's difficult probably for you to sit down and watch a game, standing up or whatever. People come up to you. You have to understand somewhat what Brian Canada means to this town.
Well, I mean, appreciate that, those words. It has been special. I mean, people are very nice to me and respectful, and it makes a person feel good. And it's been an honor to been part of the Lagodi Lion family.
Right.
And I was fortunate to play with a lot of good athletes, both in baseball and basketball. So, yeah, it's been a very special time. And to your point, the other night I really wanted to focus in on that game.
Yeah.
And I did for the most part. I hope I didn't come across rude to other individuals, and we talked to several. But I was really wanted to watch that game hand on in person, and then they looked good the other night.
Well, that might have been the best game of the year. So you keep coming to those games.
No look passes, open man, getting the ball around. I was very impressed.
Yeah, shooting percentage just out of this world because of high percentage shots, right?
That's
it's just fun to watch right now. We hope it continues, but it will be a special time whenever you're able to do that. So you had told me in the radio interview the other day that you were able to witness Jeff Doyle's his well, he almost got there. 18 points behind you. And, it was only about 20 years old, not even that at the time, your record.
Right.
So you weren't quite ready to give that up.
Jeff, I apologize.
You would have gracefully, but.
Would have had to.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. I actually lived in Augusta, Georgia.
Yeah.
And I drove up that weekend when they were going to the semi-state. And I wanted them to win, but I can honestly say, Jeff, that I didn't want the record to be broken just quite yet. And unfortunately, Lagodi got beat in a tight game against Evansville Bossy. And so I was blessed at that moment
You were okay with that. Yeah.
I was. I don't know if that's selfish or.
It's human nature. It's human nature. Now, so here, you think Junior G wanted you to break his record?
Probably not. I don't know if we've ever discussed that or not.
Never have?
Probably not.
Yeah.
But
I bet you've had some good discussions with Junior G over the years.
I have.
Yeah.
I have. I actually got my first golf clubs from Junior when he was at North Davis after I graduated, of course. He was still there, and I'd go over to the gym and we'd shoot around, and he actually gave me my first golf clubs. He yanked them out of the storage, no doubt, of the athletic department. But right. But I am ready to hand the torch to present to Peyton.
Yeah,
he has earned that.
He certainly has, and hopefully by the time you watch this, unless I get it up tonight, which will be Monday night, it'll be another 24 hours before this guy gives up the record. Brian, anything else? I like to give my guests just kind of a forum, because usually when I get out of here, I wish I would have asked Brian this.
Sure.
Or you, maybe I wish I would have said that. And you still will, and I still will. But anything that you can think of that we didn't talk about that you would at this point in time?
At the fear of starting to ramble,
Sure.
maybe a few things, and that would be remiss not to mention Coach Kavanaugh. He was in Crane when I was in the 5th grade, and of course he taught and coached the Trout boys and myself and others. But I had the opportunity to play with mainly Jim when I was in the 6th grade. But when I was in the 5th grade, I was able to play with Jack a little bit on the 8th grade team. Of course, we're not talking about a big school there, but Coach Kavanaugh was wonderful. And then Coach Nante was our junior high coach. And then when I became a freshman, I believe that's when Coach Nante also moved up. I wanted to just make sure I mentioned Coach Kavanaugh and Coach
Dante,
Dante.
I mean, you're right. You can't talk about Lagodi Lion basketball in that era without putting those two in there. Are you aware that the former St. John's Gym is now called Lee Kavanaugh Gymnasium?
And you see it here and Terry live out on that road going out, and when you come, you can see the Lee Kavanaugh Court or Lee Kavanaugh Gym. Is that what it's called?
Lee Kavanaugh Gymnasium,
yeah.
But I mean, they're just as important as anybody to Lagodi's success. I'm sure you'll agree to that.
Oh, I do. Yeah, absolutely. At least in my lifetime, and they, Coach Kavanaugh, Coach Nante, and Coach Butcher have done so much for me. Wouldn't have been successful without their leadership and their guidance and just teaching us the basic fundamentals. So,
when you played baseball, who's your coach?
Coach
Butcher or Coach Nante?
My freshman year and sophomore year, it was Coach Butcher.
Yeah.
Then my junior year was Coach Nante.
Okay.
And, excuse me, I didn't get to play my junior year because it was part of the discipline. Discipline. But my senior year, and I think Coach Nante actually would have been my coach because he took over my junior year. And our senior year was Coach Nante, and we did win the sectional my senior year.
He won a few sectionals and beyond.
Awesome baseball coach.
Awesome.
Hall of Famer, right?
Hall of Famer.
Right.
I mean, the junior varsity record that he had can't be matched, right?
What is it? Okay.
I don't know. I don't know. It's,
Okay.
You're putting me on the spot there. Coach Nante, shoot me a text. What is it? He may not know, but it's out there somewhere. Been a pleasure and an honor to see you.
Thank you, Mark. Greg,
yeah. Well, it's not as much a pleasure and honor as it was, but Mark's a good friend with you. Yeah. But it's so good to have you here, and we thank you for watching. Now, you're watching this at the time that Brian Canada, as we said, is the current boys all-time scoring leader. I take that back. You might be watching it when he's the former boys all-time scoring leader. But Brian, thanks so much, and enjoy the rest of the week here in town.
We will do that.
As Brian Canada, I'm sure that you got to know a little bit more about him. I sure did, than what I knew. And we thank again Brian Canada for being our Indiana neighbor, and thank you for watching.
Thanks.